The story begins with a girl who is amazed upon seeing the thousand-year-old capital. Sitting in a carriage, she notices that it looks different from Bourbon's cityscape. The old man sitting beside her reminds the girl, calling her Princess Alicia, that the future Queen of Windsor should behave gracefully. Princess Alicia apologizes to the old man, Chancellor Richard. He tells her that she must act in accordance with her royal title. Hearing this, she pouts and grows even angrier as she wonders how he dares to speak of shame while he himself has taken her family hostage. They reach the castle, and Princess Alicia gazes upon the terrifying fortress of the martial Tyrant. The special castle radiates an aura of horror, yet she reminds herself that she must face it for the sake of her family, and vows that she will try her best not to get killed. Inside the castle, a man stands with his sword poised to sever the king's head. The king, trembling, reminds him that he was the one who discovered and formally recognized him as his brother, saying that it is only thanks to him that the man became a general. He implores him not to forget that debt of gratitude. The man, whose single visible eye glimmers coldly beneath his dark fringe, replies without emotion that the king only elevated him because he was an easy tool to strengthen the nation. The king shivers in fear and hesitantly confesses that he admits it to some extent, but argues that if he had not promoted him, the man would have been imprisoned in a remote province. The one-eyed man lets out a low, disdainful chuckle and raises his blade once more, declaring that he has already fulfilled his purpose. The king, sensing the end of his life, drops to his knees and pleads desperately, proclaiming that he is the man's real brother, even if only a half-blood, and asking how he can bring himself to slay his own kin. The one-eyed man, resolute and unmoved, refuses to hesitate. As the king bleeds and begs for his life, offering his throne in exchange for mercy, his voice breaks into terrified screams, insisting that he does not want to die. The man with the covered eye delivers the fatal strike and coldly remarks that if the king had wished to live, he should have been a better ruler. His sword drips with blood as the royal chamber falls silent. The minister steps forward and congratulates him, inviting him to ascend the throne, for from this moment on, he shall be the King of Windsor. He sits upon the throne, contemplating the cruel twist of fate, his mind drifting back to memories of his childhood. His family, comrades, mentor, and everything once precious to him have slipped through his fingers like fading light. A single drop of blood falls from his finger, staining the floor beneath him. The minister, noticing his distant gaze, inquires softly whether something troubles his majesty. The king exhales slowly and murmurs that it is nothing more than a meaningless dream. The minister, named Cedric, approaches, and the majesty inquires what he wishes to discuss. Cedric replies that it concerns Princess Alicia and that she will be arriving soon. The majesty inquires whether the time has already come, then rises from his throne and declares that he will welcome his bride personally. As they proceed, murmurs ripple through the gathered crowd. People whisper among themselves that the majesty is a cruel man who was once stripped of his title and assisted only by a royal retainer whose family has guarded the borders since the nation's founding. They remark that the majesty shows no mercy. Cedric urges him to treat Princess Alicia with gentleness. The majesty assures him that he intends to do so. Cedric reminds him that if Princess Alicia departs, there will be no woman left for him. The majesty responds that he has never sought women's affection. Rather, they are the ones who end up weeping on their own. Cedric advises that he should understand how much effort a woman invests in her emotions, and that a man cannot simply crush her spirit under his indifference, however refined his manners may appear. He further counsels that when conversing with women, one should refrain from displaying excessive empathy. No matter how insincere such restraint might sound, a few sympathetic words are often wiser. The king reflects that doing so would feel dishonest, yet Cedric insists that exaggerated sincerity in romantic matters causes more harm than good. He continues, explaining that men and women possess different notions of kindness, and that 9 out of 10 women would likely feel wounded if the majesty were to respond with so-called honesty. He acknowledges Cedric's reasoning. Cedric concludes that women often seek only words of affirmation. The king, narrowing his gaze, confirms if he means only affirmation, to which Cedric nods with a faint smile, believing the majesty has begun to grasp his point. But then he remarks that Cedric's words suggest women are simply foolish. Cedric sighs in weariness, wondering how the majesty has reached such a conclusion after all his explanations. The majesty clarifies that he does not truly believe all women are foolish, and Cedric agrees, though he adds that matters of the heart often alter human reasoning. His Highness reflects with a faint, distant tone that love seems to make fools of people in court, but Cedric disagrees, insisting that it is only the subtle differences between men and women that create misunderstanding. Cedric ends his counsel by urging the king to show kindness to the princess. He promises to handle the matter carefully, acknowledging that this alliance with Valois is their nation's lifeline. Cedric expresses his faith in him. Left in thought, he understands Cedric's concern. He feels that something essential is missing within him as a person. Since childhood, his relentless honesty has often been perceived as harsh. He cannot identify what part of him is absent, yet he suspects it may be a human heart itself. That must be why he can make calm and precise decisions, untouched by emotion. He believes that even his success in defending the kingdom during the war 3 years ago was due to this very trait. Still, he feels pity for his bride and wonders whether a man like him could truly share a life with another. He hopes he might at least build a genuine relationship with her and bring her some happiness, though he knows that filling the emptiness within himself is impossible. Of that he is certain. The Majesty steps out of the castle where the princess waits in her carriage. She catches sight of him and is shocked. She remembers how only a month ago she had been a commoner in the Valois kingdom. A month before that, the King of Valois informed Alicia that she would be married in Windsor. Alicia, visibly disheartened, protested, but the king reminded her that she was his blood and a legitimate princess, though her mother had once been only a maid serving the queen. He confessed that he had an affair with her mother, whose exile was the result of the queen's wrath. He tells Alicia that now he needs someone to marry into Windsor, yet her sisters have all refused. Therefore, the duty falls upon her. He warns that the man she must wed is known as a war tyrant. Hearing this, Alicia protests again that she does not wish to do it. But the king silences her, declaring that she has no right to refuse and reminding her that the safety of her father and 2 younger siblings depends on her compliance. So Alicia has no choice but to agree. Now, as she watches the Majesty, Wilfred Ivan, she thinks that one wrong move could make him kill her without hesitation, for the Majesty's very presence exudes danger. Alicia feels that if she could escape, she would do it at this moment, but she remembers her vow at her mother's grave, to protect her younger siblings as long as she lives. She hopes that one day she might see her family again. Alicia straightens her back, her eyes filled with determination. She refuses to die as a substitute for her half-sisters. Resolving herself, she prepares to step out of the carriage. However, the instant she catches sight of the Majesty's face, her courage falters, and she turns to Chancellor Richard, murmuring that she needs a little more time to compose herself. Richard, frowning, scolds her for disgracing Valois and, without hesitation, pushes her forward. Alicia stumbles and falls, but when she opens her eyes, she finds the Majesty standing before her, ready to catch her. In that brief, chaotic moment, her elbow accidentally strikes the Majesty's forehead. A stunned silence fills the air as everyone looks on in disbelief. He lets out a restrained groan of pain, and Alicia, horrified, freezes in panic, realizing what she has just done. Alicia rushes toward the Majesty, her voice trembling as she wonders if he is all right. She hurriedly apologizes, but he offers no response, his silence weighing heavily upon her. Fear begins to creep into her chest, and she convinces herself that her life is now officially ruined. A wave of dread consumes her, and she mutters beneath her breath that she wishes she could die and start over again. Cedric arrives in a hurry, concern written across his face. He addresses the Majesty with worry, inquiring whether he requires a physician. The Majesty, composed despite the scene, instructs everyone not to panic, and explains that he merely lost balance from the heat and that it is nothing serious. He then turns to Alicia and gently inquires if she is injured in any way. His words leave her momentarily stunned, for such calmness is not what she expected. Yet his gaze is so chilling that Alicia feels she has seen it before, the same look once worn by that grim reaper. In the past, when Alicia was traveling with her mother in a carriage, they were ambushed by robbers. The attackers surrounded them, their eyes glinting with greed, and were about to seize both mother and daughter. Alicia's mother protested fiercely, pleading that they leave them alone. However, upon noticing their modest clothing, the robbers realized that the 2 possessed little of value and decided instead to take them captive to sell for money. The mother screamed for help, her voice echoing into the distance, but the leader of the robbers seized her by the arm and dragged her from the carriage. He forced her to see the bloodied scene outside, where every guard lay dead. No one was coming to their aid. Terror filled both Alicia and her mother as the robbers sneered, declaring that they now belonged to him. He lifted Alicia into the air by her arm, and she cried out in pain, pleading for him to let her go. Her cries grew louder, enraging the man, who struck her harshly across the face and ordered her to be silent. But the more he hit her, the louder she wept, her small body trembling in agony. The robber, furious, snarled that it was punishment time and vowed to keep beating her until she stopped crying. Her mother begged him to stop, her voice breaking, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Amid the chaos, a young boy appeared, a sword glinting in his hand. He stepped forward, his presence sharp and cold, claiming that he had heard the commotion and came to investigate. One of his eyes was hidden beneath his hair, and the other gleamed with a terrifying calm. The robbers turned toward him in rage, shouting that he would pay for interfering. But the boy moved like the wind, cutting them down one after another until every assailant lay dead. The leader, trembling now, watched in disbelief as the boy, still expressionless, wiped his blade clean. The robber could not comprehend how such a child could kill so mercilessly, as though slaughter were merely a chore. Desperate, the leader grabbed Alicia, pressing his sword to her neck. He barked at the boy to throw down his weapon and not come closer, threatening to kill her if he disobeyed. The boy, unflinching, met his eyes and retorted coldly, asking if the man was truly that foolish to believe he would discard his weapon for someone he did not even know. He stepped forward slowly, his gaze as cold as death, and told the robber that by defying him, he had sealed his own fate. Alicia froze in horror as the boy's blade struck, ending the man's life in one swift motion. From that day onward, Alicia remembers him not as a savior, but as a reaper. At present, the Majesty waits for her and inquires if she is all right. Alicia comes to her senses and rises on her own, insisting she is completely fine. Chancellor Richard approaches, bows, and forces Alicia to bow in apology for her misconduct, though anger flashes in her eyes. He was the one who shoved her. The Majesty, however, dismisses it as a mere accident and waves for them not to trouble themselves, then gestures for them to lift their heads. Richard, eyes downcast with respect, murmurs his gratitude for such kindness. The Majesty moves to announce that he will proceed with the ceremony, yet his gaze lingers on Alicia, who appears ill at ease. Wilfred muses that if the beginning is already so flawed, the path ahead will be harsh. He privately pities her, a girl cast out by royal cruelty to live among commoners instead of growing up beside the queen's children. His stare chills the air. He then probes whether she finds him frightening. Alicia falters, panic washing over her as she hesitates to answer. In her mind, she braces herself to speak, thinking he might be that grim reaper from that night, and fearing that a single wrong word will mean her death. Then, clutching her mother's counsel in memory, she steels herself not to allow her emotions to dictate her decision. Alicia begins to think back to her childhood, recalling how her mother once told her that there are two kinds of frightening people in this world. The first are those who are genuinely kind, and the second are devils who approach with gentle smiles. Her mother explained that truly kind people often wear unexpectedly stern faces. She even gave the example of the boy who saved them that day. Her mother told her that if she could learn to tell the difference between the two, she would someday find happiness, just as her mother once did. She also reminded her not to be afraid, but to look clearly at the person before her. In the present, Alicia, still lost in those thoughts, lowers her head and apologizes to the Majesty for losing her composure. To him, such reactions are nothing new, for he often intimidates others without meaning to. The Majesty observes her quietly and remarks that she must have heard countless stories about him, so her reaction is understandable. His lips curve into a faint, almost reluctant smile, one so soft that Alicia finds herself caught off guard. Something within her stirs, an unfamiliar feeling she cannot name. As she recalls each moment of their brief encounter, how he caught her when she fell, how he spoke with calm control, yet her heart continues to race in panic. King Wilfred studies her frightened face and silently admits to himself that if he could, he would have sent her back to her family. But the fate of an entire nation depends on this union, for the bond between Windsor and Valois determines their kingdom's survival. Turning to Cedric, he remarks that the princess does not appear comfortable and instructs that the bridal ceremony be postponed. Before he can complete his order, Alicia interrupts him, her voice trembling yet firm, urging him to wait. The Majesty looks at her in confusion as she steadies herself, summoning all the courage within her. Her mother's words echo in her mind, that a girl must have courage. She remembers the boy who once saved her life, the one she mistook for a reaper. Telling herself that she is not afraid, she straightens her posture and resolves to stand firm. Gathering every ounce of strength, she looks directly at him and declares that she is fine now. A wind of silence sweeps through the hall, heavy and still. Then Alicia exhales and adds that they should proceed with the ceremony. The Majesty watches her with quiet astonishment, his expression unreadable as the silence between them deepens. Later, the ceremony begins, and Alicia greets everyone with calm grace. When the moment of their union arrives, she stands before the Majesty in her bridal gown, radiant beneath the solemn light of the hall. The Majesty gazes at her and finds his thoughts unexpectedly unsettled. No woman he has ever encountered has looked at him in such a way. They are usually terrified, as Alicia once was, or else they fawn and flatter, driven by hunger for the power he possesses. It has always been one of those two faces, but this time, with Alicia, it feels entirely different. Her eyes hold something that disarms him, something pure and unfamiliar, and it catches the Majesty completely off guard. When the vows are completed, the Majesty reaches forward, lifting the bride's veil. The soft glow of candlelight touches Alicia's features, and for a brief moment he feels time pause. She is undeniably beautiful, gentle, nervous, and sincere. With quiet admiration, he leans closer and presses a light kiss upon her forehead, sealing the ritual. As the ceremony concludes and the guests slowly depart, the castle grows silent once more. Alicia, now alone in the chamber prepared for her, exhales in relief. She thinks to herself that she has somehow managed to endure the ceremony without collapsing. Yet, when her gaze drifts toward the bed, her heart begins to race. The thought of what might come next terrifies her, and even imagining it makes her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Alicia is not mentally prepared, as she doesn't even have a boyfriend. It is the wedding night, and she knows what it means. As she brings these thoughts to mind, the Majesty comes into the room. He gazes at her and she becomes frightened. He tells her to relax and mentions that he does not intend to do anything. Alicia notices that strange smile on his face again. She then tries to determine whether he truly does not intend to do anything and whether it will be all right. She has already been told that tomorrow night the bed sheets will be inspected for blood, and the maid also told her that it is a custom meant to confirm a princess's chastity and to ensure that any child born afterward belongs to His Highness's bloodline. It is a standard tradition among aristocratic families. So she tells the Majesty that no matter how frightening it is, she will do her best, as this is something that has to be done. But he responds that he never had such an intention in the first place. She is shocked and asks if he is saying this because she was too afraid, but he refuses, saying it has nothing to do with that. Then Alicia starts thinking about how all the women at the ceremony today were so beautiful, and compared to them, she seems so plain. She asks the Majesty if she is not his type, but he replies that she is reasonably pretty, though he will not call her a great beauty. She does not like his comment. Wilfred then moves to a serious topic and tells her that he needs to inform her of one thing first. Alicia asks what it is. He tells her that he has no intention of having a child and that he understands this makes him an unworthy husband, but he apologizes by bowing his head. She is shocked and tells him to raise his head. The Majesty says this is something he should have mentioned before the marriage, and that telling her now is practically a breach of contract, but the marriage needed to happen. Alicia cannot take it anymore. She tells him that she understands and accepts his apology, so he should raise his head now. The Majesty asks if she does not want to know the reason behind it, but she says she does not want to listen to it and that she simply forgives him. Alicia thinks to herself that she was just a commoner until recently, and now a king is bowing his head before her. She cannot take it. He compliments her, saying that she has a generous heart. This confuses her, and she asks if the king doesn't need to have children. Wilfred looks serious and explains that wanting his children to become the next king is a foolish thought. He begins to recall that no sane person would want their child to live a life like his. 9 years ago, war broke out with the neighboring nation Amal, and the Majesty was sent to the front lines because he carried royal blood. He fought and fought. Many lives were lost, but they stood victorious in the end. Yet this cursed blood drew him into another storm of chaos. When he returned to the kingdom, they forced him to become the king to ensure its survival. For that, he ended up killing his own half-brother. He claims that the blood of royalty has only brought him endless battles, and all that remains for him now is an empty throne. He does not even wish, even in his dreams, to pass this burden on to his child. He tells Alicia that people who make their children into kings are countless, yet they kill their own family without hesitation. That is why he refuses to let his own child be killed or become a killer over the throne. After hearing this, she begins to think about what Chancellor Richard once told her, that the Majesty had been targeted countless times by his own family and that, in the end, he survived only by killing his half-brother. She realizes that she herself could never harm her siblings. It is unthinkable. So she understands his feelings and lets out a sigh. They agree on not having children. Wilfred feels bad for her, but since she accepted it, he will do everything he can to make up for it. And he tells her this sincerely, bowing his head again. Alicia tells him she does not mind it at all. The Majesty replies that it is good then. She then asks who will be the next king, and the Majesty replies that he has a younger brother who is a bit unreliable, but with the support of someone like Cedric, he will manage well. Hearing his words, she understands that he has no attachment to the throne. Wilfred meets her gaze as Alicia speaks. She's heard he seized the throne, unleashed purge after purge, and became a man feared by all. So why, she asks softly, would he take the crown when he so clearly hates it? He sets his glass down before answering her question. Alicia hesitates, seeing his serious expression, and thinks he might not want to talk about it, so she says it is fine. But the Majesty begins to explain that the country was already rotten with corruption and all those things, and no one was willing to take bold action. The previous two rulers did nothing, indulging in excess and dragging the nation toward downfall. Then he realized that the people were placing their hopes in him, wishing for change, and that there was no one else who could take that responsibility. That is all it was. Alicia now understands that he never wanted the throne out of desire. Even if he is hated by the public, he still thought of their happiness. That is why he took the throne and bears it for his nation. He does it only because he has to. Alicia thinks that the Majesty is not afraid to discard the lesser for the greater good, and that he carries a kind of ruthless resolve. But she also feels that this is not all there is to him. She smiles while looking at him, thinking that the real Majesty is more than this. She slowly walks toward him and looks into his eyes while telling him that, contrary to the rumors, he is actually a very gentle person. King Wilfred is shocked to hear this. Alicia looks at him and realizes that he simply has a naturally intense presence, which makes him appear frightening. His blunt way of speaking makes him difficult to understand, yet she feels that behind that sharp demeanor lies a man who is kind and sincere, someone who bears everything on his own for the sake of others. After hearing her words, the Majesty begins to laugh softly, which startles Alicia. She grows nervous, afraid that she might have spoken out of turn, and starts apologizing in a panic. The Majesty reassures her, explaining that it is only because no one has ever called him kind before. Alicia insists that he truly is a kind person, still worrying if she said something strange. The Majesty responds calmly, saying that it is indeed unusual, as people often call him cold and heartless. Alicia thinks to herself that others simply do not see him clearly. It is sad, she feels, that no one tries to understand him. Even if no one else does, she wants to be the one who sees his true self. She knows she cannot express such feelings openly, but in her heart, she feels a quiet warmth and thinks that she is already his wife now. He then remarks that her perspective is rather unusual, but he admits that he is glad she became his wife. His words make her blush deeply. He adds that since they will be together for a long time, it is better to be on good terms than not. She pouts slightly, thinking that he speaks too plainly and does not understand how to express things sweetly, but even so, his honesty makes her heart stir. Meanwhile, in the palace, a grand party takes place where the nobles gather in secret. They complain about the king's new reforms, saying his ideals are unrealistic and that giving more to the people will only destroy the kingdom. They call him heartless for punishing those who disobey, and mention that even the Marquis of Sussex was banished. Not only that, but they claim that the king exists because of them, boasting that their families have supported the Windsor royal line for generations. They accuse him of living in comfort while ignoring their suffering, and insist that he has forgotten his place as their ruler. Their conversation soon turns more dangerous. One of them protests that he has said it before. The king is not fit to rule. They all agree that he must be forced to abdicate the throne. They begin plotting, recalling how many women they had sent to the Majesty, only for all of them to meet their deaths. And now that he has married the Princess of Barrois, even political pressure will no longer work. A confrontation is impossible, as his skill in battle is unmatched. Yet they know there is still a single weakness, a fatal flaw they can strike. They whisper that the king does not understand human emotions, and if they use that against him, it will cause internal conflict across the kingdom. Confident in their plan, they prepare to set the downfall of Windsor in motion. Meanwhile, the Majesty takes Alicia to meet Cedric. Alicia greets him politely, but her voice trembles, and she fumbles her words since she is not familiar with the palace customs. Embarrassed, she scolds herself inwardly for always losing composure at important moments. Cedric pays no mind to her mistake and introduces himself as the chief secretary, speaking with calm politeness as if to ease her nervousness. Alicia notices his refined manners and thinks to herself that, though she cannot say it aloud, he truly looks elegant. The Majesty tells Alicia that Cedric is his right hand, and that if she ever needs help, she can rely on him. She smiles warmly and says she has heard of his reputation. The room falls silent for a moment. Then everyone bursts into laughter. The Majesty laughs heartily and tells her that she is truly amusing. Alicia blushes with embarrassment and apologizes, saying she must seem like a clumsy wife. The Majesty, still smiling, assures her that he meant it as a compliment. She insists that he is just laughing at her, but he replies that it is not mockery. He genuinely enjoys her presence. Cedric observes them quietly, surprised by the change in the king's demeanor. He has known the Majesty for a long time, but has never seen him act this way with anyone. The king, who was always distant and solemn, now shows warmth and humor that seem entirely new. Cedric comments lightly that they have grown close in just one day. The Majesty responds that it is thanks to Alicia's personality, though she pouts and says he is teasing her again. The Majesty denies it, saying he is only speaking honestly. Later, as the Majesty and Alicia walk through the palace corridors, they encounter the king's younger brother. The Majesty mentions that he had planned to visit him later, but decides to introduce him to Alicia at once. She greets him politely and the young man bows with a bright smile, introducing himself as Richard Aquitaine Windsor.